for taking the time today. We're going to go over a few different live captioning and translation tools in Microsoft 365. My name is Matt, and I work with Microsoft stores supporting schools. So doing a couple trainings for Modesto City schools. I work with quite a few institutions in the Bay Area and even some up further north in California. So really a lot of stuff on accessibility, OneNote class notebook, Teams. I'll have my contact information at the end in case you have any other questions. But if there's documentation you're looking for, you have questions about features or having any frustrations, you are definitely welcome to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Today, we're going to go over PowerPoint Live, which is the web form of the captioning that's available through the PowerPoint Online web browser. We're also going to go over PowerPoint Presentation Translator, which is what you're currently seeing in use. That's available for the Windows 10 desktop application. I'm going to go over what it looks like on the presenter side, so you ensure you have the correct options set. We're also briefly going to go over Microsoft Teams live events. I don't have the ability to completely walk through that demonstration, but I do have a screenshot to let you know what it looks like when you're creating an event to ensure that captioning is enabled. Briefly go over what it's going to look like on the audience side of things when they're visiting the links that are provided by these services, and then I'll open up some time for question and answer at the end in case there's anything that I haven't made clear. There's a chat window over on the right-hand side. So if you do have questions throughout, I don't have the ability to view that, but when I pause for questions, Imen can help moderate to ensure that I'm not leaving anyone behind or getting anyone lost.
Of course, yeah.
Cool, thank you. All right, so the first one we're going to go over is PowerPoint Live. PowerPoint Live is available to anyone that's presenting using the online version. So the thing that I really like about this is that it's platform agnostic. Anyone that has access to Microsoft 365 for education can access PowerPoint online through the web browser. Some schools that I work with, not every faculty member or staff member has a Windows device, so this allows people that might be on a Chromebook or people that may be presenting from a MacBook to still take advantage of the captioning tools and make the online classroom or an online presentation more accessible. I'll do a live demo shortly, but you can see there in the screenshot that I have provided, the slideshow tab, which is underlined there on the kind of middle right-hand side of that screenshot, is where you're going to see the ability to enable PowerPoint Live. That Present Live button is what you're going to select to enable live captioning, and we'll go over what that looks like in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and stop the captioning here and open up a demo PowerPoint deck online to showcase what that looks like. So if everyone can see, I'll expand my web browser here. You can see here that on the slideshow tab, I have the ability to start my slideshow as I normally would, but I also have the ability to enable PowerPoint Live, and I also have the ability to create some subtitle options here. In the drop-down menu for Always with Subtitles, I have the ability to select the language that the presenter is going to be speaking. You can see we have 8 different languages in complete support, and then we have roughly a dozen languages in preview at the moment for the presenter side. And on the subtitle side, this is going to be the stuff that's presented on screen by default. That does not mean that that's the only language that the captions are going to be presented in, but you can decide by default if maybe the majority of your audience is an English-speaking audience. You may want to provide the captioning in English. It'll still allow others in your audience to get captions in a different language if they so choose. You also have the ability here to go to the audio settings, and that's where you're going to be able to select your microphone and your spoken language as well. Always good to double check that before you're presenting so that the captioning is accurate. I'm using the onboard microphone within my Surface, and that's working just fine at home. But I know for maybe if we're back in person and you're presenting to a larger audience, I would recommend using some kind of a Bluetooth or USB microphone for better clarity. But the onboard microphone for many modern computers these days is pretty accurate. You also have the ability here with these 4 selections here to choose where you'd like the captions to be presented. You can have them overlaid on top of your slides, either above or below, or I prefer presenting them either above or below the slide. It is going to make your deck slightly smaller, but I like the ability to have the deck completely unobstructed by the captions. I think that makes the clarity for the captions, they're a bit easier to read, and it also ensures that none of the information present on your deck is obscured. If we go over to present live here, you'll see there's a drop-down menu where you can make your audience only people within the organization, so within your particular school's domain, or you can open it up to anyone. So that, say, maybe if there's a parent listening in on a lecture and they'd like translated captioning, maybe the student is a first-generation English speaker, but the majority of the household speaks Spanish natively. If a parent wants to follow along, they can go to the link that's generated here, and they can get personalized captions in Spanish, and they won't be prevented from accessing the meeting, even though they're not a member of the domain. So you'll see here, I don't even really have a deck. This will work just fine if you have multiple slides here. I'm actually going to create a quick second slide here to showcase some of the functionality on the audience side. Just so you can see, one of the things that they have in PowerPoint Live that I really appreciate is that ability to see which slide the presenter is on interspersed with the captions, and that'll make sense in just a second. So if we go ahead and go to Present Live, that's going to automatically create this splash page that you're seeing here, and it'll go through an animation that tells the audience how to access the personalized live captioning. They have the ability to participate, and they also have the ability to follow along and navigate the slides on their own as they'd like to. So if anyone wants to, they can go ahead and follow along at this URL that we have up here at the top right. There's also a QR code. Maybe if you're following along on your phone and that's a bit easier to access, you can go ahead and scan the QR code, and that'll bring you to the Microsoft Translator page where you'll be able to view the personalized captions.
Matthew, I'm getting a message that says I do not have access to this live presentation.
Okay, let me go ahead and back out and make sure that I'm sorry, I think I just didn't choose. Let me try anyone. Are you having better success there?
Let me try real quick.
Okay. I see someone's joined, so I think I apologize. I showed the options and then forgot to enable the correct one, so apologies there.
Yes, we're good.
Cool. All right, so this opens up automatically. This automatically generated. I didn't create this slide ahead of time, and then what I would do is I could just click forward, and it'll go along to my presentation. Once we're on the actual deck, oh, sorry, move this out of the way. You'll see one thing that I really appreciate: people that might be late to the meeting or the presentation can go up here at the top, and that quick URL is perpetual, so they're able to see and join into the captions midway through. And as you're hopefully seeing on your end of things, it's translating in real time. You can select your language there on the bottom right, and it'll give you the option to switch the language at will. And if I go ahead and navigate here to the second one, so where I can actually see these buttons, on the presenter side of things, if you hover the mouse over on the bottom left corner, it's going to give you a few options to change the way that you're presenting. This button right here gives you a quick snapshot. So if you have several different slides and need to jump to one, you can go ahead and do so using that tiled button right there. You also have the ability to use a pen, highlighter, or eraser to annotate your slides midway through the presentation. And then this button here, I like turning on at the very beginning. That's going to allow the presenter to have the captions presented on screen simultaneously. This button's not going to be available during that initial splash page where the QR code is present, but as soon as you dive into your actual PowerPoint deck, you'll hover your mouse over here and you'll be able to enable those captions so that anyone that may just need the native language being presented, they just need those captions, they get the services of the captioning without actually having to open up a web browser. And I saw there someone just used one of the emojis there. Another neat thing is that you have audience interaction that's available. And that'll give the presenter some visual feedback. As I'm presenting here, I can't really see much of what's going on. I have this little window here in the bottom right corner, but beyond that, I don't have much interactivity with my audience. So it gives the presenter a bit more visual feedback that doesn't interrupt the flow of their presentation. You also have the ability, this button here on the far right is going to allow you to end the slideshow at any time. And then this button right here is going to allow you to show the welcome screen if, say, there were technical difficulties at the beginning of the meeting and we need to go back to ensure that the QR code is available. I can use this kind of radio button and go back to the welcome screen, or I can copy the link. Maybe I'm using a Teams meeting and I want to paste this link into the chat for people that may have difficulty typing. I can copy that in there, and that way they can just click and join the link immediately without having to actually type anything in. I also have the ability here, clicking the microphone. When I click it, it will no longer be red. And when it has that line through it, it doesn't mean that my audience can't hear me. It just stops the captioning if maybe I'm troubleshooting some things and it's not relevant to the presentation, so I don't want to fill the transcript at the end with unnecessary information. I can go ahead and use the mute feature here to ensure that unnecessary conversation isn't being conveyed during the transcription. Does anyone have any questions with regards to PowerPoint Live, what it looks like on the audience side, anything like that? Okay. I will go back to PowerPoint deck here. Sorry, let me get. Just want to make sure I'm enabling the captions now that I'm back here. So the next thing we'll go over is the Microsoft PowerPoint Presentation Translator. You can go ahead and download that plugin at aka.ms/presentationstranslator. And that is the service that I'm currently using here that has the ability to present the captions on screen. The second screenshot you see down here will allow you to select the language that you need guidance on the web page. No matter what version of the Presentation Translator plugin you download, it's still going to support the over 55 different language packs that our cloud services support. They're working on increasing the support to other desktop applications, but at the moment this is only available in the Windows client. For people on other platforms, I would recommend using PowerPoint Live instead. So when you're setting up the device for Microsoft PowerPoint Presentation Translator, you download the plugin that's available on that website. And you'll want to do that on an administrator account on your local Windows device, not a guest account. But if you're on something that has admin privileges, the next time you start up PowerPoint, the ribbon's going to look a little bit different. You'll see the screenshot there in the top left is going to have new features including Start Subtitles, which is the button that you use to engage the captioning. The second screenshot you see down there below are some of the options that you get presented, and I'll review all this in just a second, but I wanted to blow it up to make it a bit more visible for folks. You have the ability to choose the language that the presenter will be speaking, the language that you want the on-screen subtitles to be presented in, and the ability to customize speech recognition. When you enable that the first time you're launching the PowerPoint Presentation Translator plugin, it is going to cause about a 5-minute sync for us to connect with cloud services. But the benefit is it's continually using machine learning to improve the accuracy of the captioning. I first became aware of PowerPoint Presentation Translator in about a year ago now, and it was pretty accurate. But I'll say that over time, the more that I've presented this to people, especially outside of a language that I commonly present in, like Spanish, I continually get more and more responses from educators or from parents that are really impressed with the accuracy that the captions are presented in across all the different languages that are supported. Enabling that just allows us to create further accuracy and improve it, and so it's constantly improving, and you're not having to download language pack updates or anything. It's all done through the cloud. Once again, I would recommend in a larger room or outside setting, once we get back to more in-person learning, you are going to get a better experience with an external microphone, whether that be USB or Bluetooth. For distance learning, the onboard microphone on your device should work very well. If you'll see down here on this screenshot, at the very bottom, there's going to be additional settings. And when you go to the additional settings page, it's going to take you to this view. This is where you have the ability to enable or disable the subtitles on screen and select whether they're going to be above or below the slides. I prefer having the slides below because they don't obstruct the deck. If they go over the slides, depending on how often or how much you're speaking, it can obscure the top of the deck, but some people may prefer the eyesight to go to the top of the deck. You can customize that as you'd like. That checkbox down below, Add Instructional Slide, just generates the QR code and the quick link URL at the very beginning. If you don't want that and you just want to use the on-screen captioning, you can disable that by unchecking that box. You don't have to worry about authentication settings or text translation category. It's really just, are we placing where we would like to place those subtitles, and would I like that instructional slide automatically generated at the beginning of the deck. Up at the very top, you'll see I have my name presented there. Where that's valuable is when we go to export the transcript of the captioning at the end, and I'll walk through how to do that. If you look on my screen at the bottom right corner, you'll see we have the quick link URL that's persistent, so anyone that's late to the presentation has the ability to visit and get their translated captioning there. I have the ability to mute and unmute my microphone if I don't want a portion of my speech to be transcribed. And then the 3 ellipses are going to give me a few additional settings, such as the ability to save transcript. The saved transcript is going to be saved as a simple text document, so it can be easily imported into, say, Microsoft OneNote for immersive reader. That way, if a student wants maybe they're having difficulty acclimating to the speed of the lecture or the online class presentation, and they want the ability to review what was presented at their own speed, they can save this transcript as a text file, import it into a tool like Immersive Reader, and then use those tools, whether that be separating the words syllabically, using an entire page translation, utilizing the read aloud feature, or using high contrast settings so they're able to keep up with the speed of class. What I really appreciate about this is that because this stuff is all built in, the students aren't having to request any additional work. It's non-stigmatizing. It's the same set of tools that everyone else has access to, so they're not shy about asking for they don't have to ask for the additional help. It's all readily available at their fingertips. I also have the ability I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, we do have a question, so I think you passed it if you can go back. So what is a deck exactly in this PowerPoint presentation?
The deck, I apologize. So the slides that I am kind of navigating back and the slides that I'm navigating back and forth here, what you're seeing at the top of the screen with the screenshots and the text, that is my PowerPoint deck or your PowerPoint presentation. It's your PowerPoint file. These
Oh,
captions can be used without the creation of a deck. I can simply open up PowerPoint, not even load a presentation, and immediately click the Start Subtitles button if I just want to present to a blank screen and have captioning available. But if I have content that I'm presenting, like this slide I have up above, that's what I'm referring to when I say a deck.
yes, just yeah. And we do have Cynthia. She's not able to, she download the translator, so she's not able to install it. Maybe she will have to check her. So she has an error message, an error occurring while using. So Cynthia, I'll have you try to do it again, because sometimes we do have like it's not working, just an error message. But if you try again, maybe it will work. If not, we will see. We'll come back to your issue later.
I'm happy to help one-on-one if that's an issue. I would say most commonly the reason for that is you might be downloading it on a Windows device, but your Windows profile needs to have administrative privileges on the local device. So that's probably what the issue is. I'm happy to meet with anyone one-on-one after all our trainings today to troubleshoot those issues.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the presentation here just to walk you through what it looks like getting this enabled and what it looks like on the presenter side. So I'm going to go ahead and go back out and go ahead and bring up my desktop application over here on the screen. So you'll see that once you have the plugin correctly installed, when I go to the slideshow tab up here at the top, these buttons that I have over here in the middle of the screen directly underneath the search bar now appear. These are not here by default, but they are available when the plugin is successfully installed. I can enable this checkbox here to always use subtitles. I don't present that because sometimes for most educators, they will use this all the time. I don't, so I can kind of walk through what this setup process looks like. The subtitle settings is where we have the ability to choose which microphone device we're using, choose where the captioning is presented, as well as choose the speaker language and the default subtitle languages. And then this button here is what I'm going to select to start the subtitles. So if I go ahead and click this button, it's going to bring up that menu that I had the screenshot for earlier. You can see there are over 55 different languages that are supported. So by default, you can select that, and that will be what's put on the on-screen subtitles. And then if everything here looks good, I can go ahead and select next. It's going to take a second to connect to our cloud services. I did not create this slide here. This is automatically generated, and this quick link URL is automatically generated at the beginning of every presentation. So you just leave this open for a minute, ensure that your audience has the ability to go on their device, whether that be a mobile device, an additional web browser, and they'll be able to get those translated captioning. And I have some slides that show what the user experience looks like there. Maybe some of you have been following along and already get an idea of what that looks like. Now you'll notice the difference between the PowerPoint presentation translator and PowerPoint Live, which we used before, is that I don't have the audience interaction here. So there's no ability for the audience to use those emojis. I'm not getting that visual feedback. Everything else is the same, though. I have that ability to mute myself. I still have the perpetual quick link URL there. I'm just using the desktop application. So maybe if I'm more comfortable with the feature set that's enabled by the PowerPoint desktop application, I have that functionality. Otherwise, I think the PowerPoint Live is a bit more platform agnostic. and the more popular one for educators these days. Anyone have any further questions on the PowerPoint Live side of things from the presenter view? Okay. So here's some screenshots of what the audience experience looks like. It's using the services that we have at translator.microsoft.com. That's a website that you can go to even outside of PowerPoint if maybe you're having a conversation with someone and want the ability to do live translated captioning. When we used to work in the Microsoft Store, I had the Translator app installed on my phone, and we had people from all walks of life come into our store because we were so close to a few airports. And I like to, my Spanish is okay, but certainly something like my Dutch or my Russian, I don't have any knowledge there. But I still had an ability to communicate with these customers because using these services, I could speak in English. They'd get the captioning or the translation provided in their language. And then when I would hand them the phone, they could speak in their native language. And when they'd hand it back to me, I'd see that translation in English so I can better respond to them and address them. So it makes environments more inclusive. It's leveraging those same services, and the experience you see here on the right-hand side is going to be more in line with what you will have seen if you were on those, if you used the quick link or the QR code that was present at the beginning of the presentation. The last thing I wanted to go over, because I know that people at Modesto City Schools use Teams live events, is the ability to support multiple language captioning within a Teams live event. Once again, we support over 55 different languages there, and for a Teams live event, up to 6 languages can be supported during a live event at any given time. On the audience side of it, when they're viewing the Teams live event in their web browser, if they hover over the video portion, they'll be able to enable captioning. And if you have the captioning configured ahead of the event, they'll see a drop-down menu where they can select which series of captions they'd like to view. When you go through the scheduling process for a Teams live event, after you select the date, the time, and title your event, you're going to click next, and you're going to be brought to a screen that looks like what I have here on the right-hand side. And what you want to do is ensure that this option here, this box for captions, is enabled. Where it says translate to, there's going to be a drop-down menu where you can select up to 6 different languages. And as long as you're doing this prior to the start of the event, those captions are going to be ready to go, and any audience member can have those enabled whenever they'd like. Even if you've already scheduled the event and maybe you find out, we've got quite a few people attending that really need that simplified Chinese language pack, and we didn't originally enable that. You can go back to your live event in your calendar, and then if you go to live event settings, can go back to this screen and ensure that the correct series of captions are presented. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to demonstrate this because my demo tenant has the captioning thing blocked. But if you're familiar with what a Teams live event looks like, it's going to be kind of similar to what you're seeing during a Teams meeting. You just hover the mouse over the screen, and then there will be a CC button that the audience member can click, and they'll be presented with the captioning options that have been enabled by the event creator. Anyone have any questions about that component?
No, we're good, Matt.
Great.
Thank
okay.
you.
You're welcome. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I did want to leave you with a link, aka.ms/accessibility, which is a great kind of one-stop shop for the various learning tools and accessibility tools that we have across all our Microsoft platforms. If you're on Office 365 rather than, say, Office 2019 or Office 2016, you're going to be able to take full advantage of things like the live captioning because they pull from our cloud services. But a lot of the other features like immersive reader, screen magnifier, narrator, there's plenty of support pages, documentation on how to get that set up. and specific documentation depending on what kind of platform you're on. It also has some links to best practices, like ensuring you're using the correct kind of nomenclature when talking about accessibility issues, or giving advice on how to better create more accessible presentations, whether that be commonly used fonts or tips on how to create more high contrast presentations to make it easier for people with difficulty seeing a standard presentation. I also wanted to leave my contact info there so you can reach out to me directly if you have any questions. And you also have my phone number there. I'm always in Monday through Friday, and I do try to check my email periodically throughout the weekend. If you are having any issues, like I believe it was Cynthia that was having issues getting the plugin set up, when I have time, I'd love to be able to sit down with people and walk through their troubleshooting. I am not by any means an IT expert, but when it comes to getting these tools enabled and understanding the feature set, I'm very passionate about what Microsoft does with accessibility, and I'd love to help in any way that I can.